We have got a bit of a comparison to do today. We're going to do a bit of shooting, we are going to get technical in the studio, and we're going to do that between the Beretta 688, the 694 and my DT11. There's a lot of similarities, there's a lot of differences, and hey, it's been a while since we got geeky and technical. I can't wait. Let's get started by establishing the basics and introducing these three guns. Starting with the 688. Released in 2024, this is Beretta's entry-level, made for competition only gun. Full retail is about 3,500. It weighs in at 3.85 kilograms, and it is a 32-inch adjustable gun. Next is the Beretta 694, the 694, released in 2019 as the midway between the 680 series and the DT series. It was sort of a revised 692. They looked at what they did there and they improved it. I really loved this gun when it came out. I think it packed a serious punch. With a non-adjustable gun, it is 4,500, and with an adjustable gun, it is 4,850-ish retail, although that will change year on year and country on country. The 694 without balancing weights comes in at 3.75 kilograms, lighter by 100 grams than the 688. Interestingly, the DT11 on the other hand is heavier, and a 32-inch adjustable version will weigh in at 3.9 to 3.95 kilograms. Retail on an adjustable DT11 starts at 10,400, non-adjustable 10,000. And this gun, the name gives it away, DT11, 2011, although it was right at the end of that year and guns started to hit shelves and shops right at the beginning of 2012. Whew, all right, we've introduced our contenders. The first thing we're going to compare is the wood at the back, or laminate at the back in the case of the 688. The 688 comes in black laminate and, depending on which country you're in, an adjustable comb. Custom stocks are not available on 688s because it's laminate. Obviously, you could obviously get an aftermarket stock and have it fitted around a 688 if you felt the need to do so. But honestly, I think these B-Fast systems in the comb and the adjustable pads are pretty good. It's going to get you 95% of the way there for fit for pretty much anyone. Custom stocks are great. I love custom stocks, I love grips, and I love how it can be absolutely perfect, but 95% of the way there is pretty good for someone like me who can't even shoot 95%. So if the gun's 95%, I'm pretty happy. The B-Fast system is this adjustable comb. You've got shims, it's done on one simple key, and when you get a gun like a 688, it comes with a box with all the bits in. You've got extra shims, you've got an Allen key to adjust it. You also have spare chokes, an adjustable trigger key and some oil, but we'll talk about your need for those things in a bit. The 694 comes without an adjustable comb. Adjustable comb versions are obviously available, but they do make a non-adjustable comb version that you'll see quite commonly. Why you'd have a non-adjustable comb version, I don't really know in a sporting clays gun. There's some money to be saved, and if you do fit it with a small tweak here or there, then, well, you've saved some money and happy days. Custom stocks are available on request if you feel the need. Both of these guns come with a palm swell. In fact, the 688, its entire stock dimension was actually copied from a 694. Copied's a strong word, but the grip is pretty much copied, and it's a fantastic grip. Big enough for your feel of palm swell, but also slim in all the right places so you can really grab hold of it and go. No complaints. I mean, Beretta have plenty of experience in making stocks with palm swells, so it's no surprise they made a good one. The 694 comes with grade 2.5 wood, by the way, and the DT11 comes with grade 3. Custom stocks are available. This one is mine. It's got a custom stock on there with a grade 3 piece of wood, so this is exactly the sort of wood you could expect on a DT. That's all we got to say about the stocks, really. Fit is going to be a personal thing. As I said, they come with changeable pads on all of them. Adjustable combs are available on all of them, and so if you get the adjustable comb and pad, I mean, if I can get a 688 to fit me and the DT that I was shooting last year to fit me pretty much perfectly, just with stick-on parts, there ain't gonna be many people they don't work for. And that is good. So no real positive or negative there. I guess the real difference, as we can see, is 688 is made of laminate, the other two are made of walnut. As we discussed, laminate is harder, it's denser, it's gonna hold and handle recoil differently to walnut. For me, it made the difference in terms of the way this gun feels like it recoils. Yes, there's some added weight, certainly in the receiver and in the stock, but I mean, just no complaints, really. I genuinely think the laminate gun recoils differently and somewhat preferably pound for pound versus the 686 Silver Pigeon Sporting, although it's a little lighter. Maybe a side-by-side comparison is order one day, who knows? At this point, let's take these guns apart and we're gonna look at the receiver on all of these things, and I will pop the stocks off so we can have a little look inside when necessary. Let's pop this 694 off, and let's pop the DT11 off as well. All right, so let's pop this stock off the 694, and we are ready to talk about our first mechanical difference. The first mechanical difference is service interval. That is the interval between services. Guess it makes plenty of sense, doesn't it? That is a metric, or a matrix, if you like, of how quickly parts wear and how many parts need replacing. A lot of that is down to recoil. 688s will recoil slightly more with the Stellium barrel than something like a DT and the Stellium Pro. They also have a slightly different lockup, but a very different action design to the DT. Less bearing surfaces, meaning a 688 needs to go in for service once every 12,000, a 694 needs to go in once every 15,000, and a DT needs to go in once every 25,000 shots. And that's done on average shots. If you're shooting 3-inch Magnum loads through it every time, it's probably going to be a slightly shortened service interval. But that is just what is recommended based on average use and care. The more you look after a gun, the longer it will last. The less miserably kicky shells you use, the longer it will last. Relatively simply speaking, everything from here back between these two guns is very similar. The internal working mechanism on a 688 and a 694, to most people, are basically the same. We could get a little geeky about certain things, but mostly they're identical. They both have adjustable triggers. Both of these guns, as you saw, are relatively easy to take the stocks off and put back on. You shouldn't be taking them on and off too often, but if you do take it out and it's righteously wet, it's probably worth a squirt of oil inside. If you take it out and get it, I don't know, submerged in water, not that you're going to be doing that with a Sporting Clays gun, take the stock off after it's dried in shape and spray it with oil. Mostly, you should leave the stock on unless you're a professional. Certainly, there's a lot of damage can be caused by not tightening it up properly. Having a loose stock on a gun is the same as having a broken stock on a gun. Something like a DT, you have a large advantage in that you can just push the safety catch forward, top lever across, and trigger unit will pop out. You can see this is slightly different. It does have an adjustable trigger, but it's got a detachable trigger unit. This gun also is fired by V-springs. These guns, the 688 and the 694, are powered by coil springs.
V-springs are the original shotgun spring. They deliver crisper trigger breaks and faster lock times, something purists swear by. Whilst coil springs are more durable and easier to replace, V-springs offer the mechanical elegance and hand-regulated precision that sets high guns apart. It's craftsmanship you can feel every time you pull the trigger, and technically, it gives you an edge.
The benefits of a V-spring is It's got slightly more power and a cleaner, more consistent power, if you like, meaning you end up with slightly faster lock times, often slightly cleaner trigger brakes, although most V-spring guns also are high quality guns, so there's not much to say between those two things. Plus, it's really cool. I don't know if that counts for anything in the real world, but it is nice. No different to having high grade wood, right? It's just a nicer product, for sure. Having a detachable trigger is a good thing. As I said, if something breaks down in competition, you can put one in and have it back running within seconds. That is a huge advantage, certainly for guys who are running big volumes of shells through their guns in trap and even competitive sporting shooters. Is it necessary? No. Is it nice? Yes. It also means you could have different triggers for different trigger weights. For those in cold countries, a heavier one for winter, a lighter one for summer? I don't know. You can also get carbon fiber ones and all manner of fun things to put in here, as you desire. All right, let's put these guns back together and we're going to start having a look at lock-up designs and how they vary. Before I screw this pad back on, it's worth noting that each of these guns is prepped and arrives ready for stock balancing weights. The 688 does not come with them, but the DT does. And they look a little bit like this. A very simple little device that just threads weight into the back. Couldn't ask for much simpler, and I guess that's a lot of the reason I'm not going to talk about handling on wide terms, because you can set these up to handle, or balance at least, front or rear heavy as you desire, or bang in the middle if you like too. That is a great improvement, and that alone is enough reason to sort of take the 688 into account as a first competition gun, which is really where it's pitched. I do think, to be honest, they made it good. They made it a little too good. As you guys know, the channel is sponsored by Beretta, but when they launched the 688, I remember speaking to Lloydie P and saying, am I mad? Am I being sort of rosy tinted? He's like, no, it is just that good. I mean, I shot my first M50 straight with this, and when I took it and shot it for the footage you've seen today, I once again did not miss. I don't think I've ever had a gun that I shot so naturally that wasn't designed for me. Does that make sense? I've shot guns better on average, but I do think it is spectacular. I really think it's a superb gun for the money, and we'll have a look at some of the reasons why I think that is in a second. The 694 stock has progressive cutouts on it, by the way. This is actually worthy of note. The sighting plane on each of these guns. The 688 has a relatively cluttered sighting plane. Because the action is designed to be bigger and heavier than a 686, we are left with more meat on the sides and more meat around the top, and they've put an anti-glare finish on there, which is great. By the way, for details on all these guns, we've got a full gun build on this. So we've got a launch video we did when this came out, and we've got another launch video from the 688, say launch videos, reviews from when they were first launched, out on the channel if you want to go really deep diving on aesthetics and details. What that does leave you though is quite a wide block around the sighting plane. Not the end of the world, but the 694 has these progressive flutes on the woodwork that lead into the scallops and the very nicely sculpted action. Overall, I really like this design. There was an element, I think, when I first saw it come out of the box that thought it was purely aesthetic, but having shot one of these, you do have a split-second advantage of looking at clays under the gun, over the gun. You're having to raise your head less. Overall, it just makes a better gun. A lot of the reason people like those step-up guns, step-up rib guns and mid-rib guns and high-rib guns is the advanced sight picture, as much as sometimes it is just to do with the stock fit, the stocks that they come with. This gives you a lot of that same vibe and feel, which is good, if you like that. I shoot seeing quite a lot of rib, and that sort of makes me have a good visual clarity and context around the gun. So whether it's particularly useful for me, I don't know, but I certainly notice it when I shoot it, so yes. But I think people who shoot a flat gun, meaning their eyes straight down the rib rather than high above it, will benefit more. All of the machining around this headwork, as well as the way this stock is fluted and curved and is just generally a nicer set of lines, takes more time, takes more effort in the finishing, and that costs a bit more money. Certain things, like the way that the action swoops back and those angles come over the top of the checkering, is just aesthetic. However, it does lend you some benefit by having a nicer line for your hand, thumb and forefinger to fall over. Whether that is 1% difference, I don't know, but you'll either like it or you won't, and it does make some difference. The reality though is it's more aesthetic, I would have thought, so it's not a real advantage other than being prettier than a 688. The DT11, for those who hadn't clocked by the way, or didn't know, DT stands for detachable trigger, which we looked at earlier, has a much wider action. And because of the way it locks up on a big crossbolt, there's sort of no avoiding that you're going to have a slightly lessened sighting plane. Most people who shoot these, well, they'll either have a slightly raised comb to see more rib, or they will just not be the sort of people who it bothers, I guess. There's an element also, by the way, that these balls of the action are actually cut down away on the DT, and the rib sits a little higher above the barrel than on the other two guns, only by a few millimeters, but that inherently does give you just a little bit of extra visual area than if it was flat down it like it is on the 688, which is just sort of a round block with a lump on the top. Lockup, let's get into lockup. So lockup on these guns comes in different sections. Firstly, the main lockup that people will reference is this. On the 688 and the 694, we have two conical lugs that protrude from the action into two holes on the barrel. It's what the 688 is famous for. It's extremely good as it wears. Those cones just continue to penetrate the hole until they run out, and then you have an oversized fitted. There's, I don't know, 3 or 4 oversizes, and you're gonna get many hundreds of thousands of rounds through a 680 series gun. And the same with a 690 series gun. Pretty much identical conical locking concept as your main locking point. Worth noting that the 688 has a pin in the top that is the top lever stop, and the 694 has a pin in the side as its top lever stop. The 688 is the new design. It is a nice revision. It's a nice revision. The DT series is different. It's a different beast. We've got a much larger locking area. In the top here, you can see there is a large cross piece. That pops out when you drop the top lever across, and as you close the gun, that bar goes across, locking across these protruding lugs. It is also extremely strong. This forces the gun down and close onto the base of the action. Both guns swing on hinge pins or trunnions. This is the external. Inside you've got a little round piece of metal, cylindrical piece of metal, that clicks into these holes, and it swings open and closed off of that. Very simple concept. The 690 series has bigger ones for larger surface area. More surface area is good. If your wearing parts have a larger surface area, the pressures and forces are spread across them. So bigger is better, I guess, in the 694 over the 688 and potentially the DT, although the DT lockup is completely different and potentially less reliant on the size of its trunnion. Shoulders, the shoulders of the action. Where is the 688? The 688. So the shoulders of the barrels are these bits here. They sit down into these cutouts in the back of the action, and so as we close the gun up, they flop on in. The 688 has straight shoulders. It is one surface area, and they are fitted by hand in the Beretta main factory. The 694, as we can see, has a curved profile to the shoulders. If you can see, it is a wider, larger surface area. It doesn't actually touch on all of that, but what it does give you is a longer, deeper flat to lock against. The DT goes back to having square shoulders. I guess on the 694 it is a more complicated thing to machine. Certainly a bit of a signature, goes with some of the swooping lines of the guns. Whether it's any better, I'd love to discuss down in the comments. Technically, yes, right? The larger surface area as that gun beds in will be beneficial. If you actually spent the time to hand regulate it and actually have that all touching, that would be a mammoth surface locking area, which would not be a bad thing. Hand regulation is a key point between these three. The 688 and the 694 are both manufactured in the main Beretta factory. They're assembled in the black, so barrels are blacked, all the parts are finished, and they are just clipped together. They're not clipped together. There's a lot of hand fitting, hand filing, hand assembly, and hand work that gets one of these things working well and reliable. The DT11, although not a Beretta Due made gun, is assembled in Beretta Due, the Beretta custom shop. Means you end up with a higher quality of workmanship. The guys who work in Beretta Due are trained to a higher standard than those who work in Beretta 1. And, well, they're the same guys who are on their way to making SOs and really climbing that ladder. So you end up with a high quality of workmanship, usually a more experienced quality of workmanship, and more hours per gun to make sure that this thing opens, closes, locks up perfectly. The 694 and the 688 are done to a standard, a great standard. But the skill and precision I have seen whilst in the Beretta Due workshop of guys working on DTs is just a step up. There is many more man hours put into it. It is why it is a better gun. All those locking surfaces have the extra time to make sure they are 100%, not 98% perfect. Every part that could be needing hand finishing has it. Yes, it's not an SO, so not every part is filed and finished by hand. The majority of the work on this action is done by a machine, and then it arrives there and they're working the barrels and working certain parts to make sure that it clips together perfectly. Moreover, and I actually skipped over, the key difference here is not the curve on the 694, it's the fact that these shoulders are replaceable, meaning there's a screw inside, you pop that out, you get new ones, have them hand fitted, giving you an extra wearing surface to keep this gun tighter for longer. The same goes for the DT11. Replaceable shoulders. Replaceable barrel shoulders are great. If you're going to shoot a gun a lot, it is a useful thing. Where the action profile on these guns is so low, you don't have space for a traditional sort of draw piece in the back of the action that would lock down into the action to give you a bit of surface area mating at the back. Instead, you have it on the shoulders. Absolutely adequate, but when they start to wear and you're only relying on a bite and hinge pins, that's bad. You need all of the locking surfaces on a gun to run in unison, which is why I had a hand regulated one to make sure they are 100% running in unison. Has some value in terms of longer life. It's why this has a 25,000 round service interval, not only because that action is bigger and stronger, but because it's hand fitted. One of the final pieces of the regulation, the way that it locks up, is this, the loop, and how this surface here goes between that and the joint of the action. So if we put that up in here, the fore-end iron is what puts pressure between this piece here and this piece here. That is all part of how a gun opens, closes, operates, and locks up. On the 688, there is a non-adjustable iron and a non-adjustable loop. On the 694, we have a very different fore-end design, including a changeable piece to go at the back of the loop and an adjustable piece on the loop. Meaning, again, instead of having to weld it up, file it up, change it up as time goes on, you just buy a new part, clip it in. That is very useful if you're going to try and wear this gun out by putting loads of rounds through it. On the DT, we have a replaceable part in the fore end and a non-adjustable loop. Again, where it's hand regulated to a higher standard, they can do that. Instead of getting two parts and working them together, or a round draw piece in the fore end mated with this adjustable loop, you end up with a hand fitted loop to an adjustable fore end, although they're both fitted to each other, he says. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, they're both fitted to each other, which is cool, right? That's how gun making works. All of these things need to work in unison so a gun opens and closes beautifully and operates beautifully for a long time. Okay, that's pretty much a lock-up comparison complete. Next thing on the list to talk about, in fact the penultimate thing we will discuss, is barrels. The barrels are different between all of them. The fundamental difference is what goes on inside, but before we go in there, let's talk about what's on the outside. The ejectors. The 688 has standard ejectors from a 680 series gun, the standard push and twists. The DT has a very similar style of ejector. They are just finished better. And if you hold them side by side, you can just see they're taken to a higher grit. They also glide in and out, easier, sweeter. It's just that hand finishing I'm talking about. To some people that will mean nothing, to some that will mean everything, to some all they'll care about is the result of what that gives you, which is slicker ejectors. The 694 is the wild card. It's got a different ejection system. Instead of being push and twist, it's got a little pin in the side here, and that needs a magnet to get it out. It's the easiest way. There are other ways, but a little magnet to take that out makes your life easier. What that means is there is more straight surfaces. It's easier to machine to make this slicker out the box, to require the same amount of hours as the 688 to get it better. It's nice, it's progress. Is it any better? I don't know. The 680 series ejectors are extremely reliable, so there's not really anything bad to say about them, is there? Chokes, same choking in all of them pretty much. Optima HP, all come with a set of 5 chokes when you buy them. Plenty of aftermarket ones, even from Beretta. They do black ported ones that I run in my semi-auto. The world's your oyster. We're not going to get too bogged down by chokes. Before we get inside, one final thing is balancing weights. The 694 comes weight ready, which is good. There are certain models of DT that do this. This is a standard DT11L, and so does not have them, and the 688 does not have them either. You can of course get magnetic ones if you wanted to add barrel weight, but the fact you get the stock weights, a lot of these guns come out the box slightly front heavy, ready to have those weights put in to bring the weight back. There you go. What is interesting is each of these comes printed with a barrel weight, and without doing like a pooled sample test, this is potentially meaningless, but we got 1510, that's 1510 grams, 1.51 kilos. On the 694 we have 1.59 kilos, and on the DT we have 1550, I think this is, yeah, 1.55 kilos. I should know that, it's my own gun. Barrel weights are variable. That's as much as we can say. How indicative of that is of an average of these barrels, I do not know. Internally, they're different. On the 688 we have a Stellium. On the 694 we have Stellium Plus, and on the DT11 we have Stellium Pro. They launched in the SL2 the Stellium Pro X, which is the next grade up again. And if you don't know what this means, I implore you to go to the description where I will leave a link to a film we made a couple of years ago, kind of debunking myself, because I didn't really believe in this internal barrel technology, didn't think it made all that much difference, and Beretta invited me out to prove me wrong. And, you know, I ended up with egg on my face, actually, because this has a bore that tapers from the chamber down to a short parallel in the barrels, this being the Stellium Pro. It's roughly 3/4 of the barrel is tapered. What that gives you is a real progressive squidge, if you like, on the shot shell. Rather than having a traditional short forcing cone, this one gradually changes and then gradually changes into the choke. Very clever technology. All of these barrels are cold hammer forged. Cold hammer forging is technically better. What it really gives you is the production capacity to make great barrels at slightly more affordable prices than doing them as one-offs. Because to machine a full-length taper down a tube, a single tube, before adding it in would be very difficult. Doing it over a cold hammer forging machine is, easy is not really the right word, but more viable, and probably just better. It is unequivocally better to get that full-length taper. It's going to be more consistent to cold hammer forge than it would be to stock remove and machine those blanks and stick them together that way. At least that's how I see it. Machining a barrel is more expensive because it is a slower process. Cold hammer forging is a really expensive process to set up, but then your unit costs are lower and potentially better and more accurate. This is not really the reason for this video. All of these are cold hammer forged. The Stellium Pro has the better bores. That's going to give you reduced recoil. That's going to give you improved downrange patterns, and more importantly, which certainly what I thought when I was out there, improved downrange energy, which means if you are hunting, that's better. If you're clay shooting, that means those 2 pellets you hit with instead of glancing off might break it at range. Stellium is still a great barrel. Stellium Plus sits somewhere between the two. Like I said, go and check that video out for a full breakdown of the differences between. There is a marked difference in performance, especially with steel shot. All barrels are HB steel proofed, obviously with the correct choke in the end. It's important to note that realistically you don't want to be choking steel too much anyway, but anything less than half choke with high performance steel and these barrels will be absolutely fine. All 3-inch chambered and all 18.6mm internal parallel bore, although it doesn't mean a lot when you've got such a variance. You've got a forcing cone about that long in this, a forcing cone about that long in this, and a forcing cone about that long in this. Like I said, go and watch that other film. It is fascinating. All right, finally, let's talk about shooter perception. So let's get these guns back together. Whilst putting these together, I really didn't actually mention that the fore-end design in this gun is different. It's a 2-piece, and 2-piece is exciting. It means you've got your loop and your catch separately, which makes the loop easier to be interchangeable than if it had a catch attached. So the catch is in the front, it's done on a push button rather than a pull lever. It's actually quite a big fundamental difference, and I believe it's made of aluminium, certainly. So that's interesting. DT, let's put that together. The thunk of a DT11 brings joy, it is for sure. Whether it's just because you've got a bit more space in the back for it to reverb like a subwoofer, or whether it's just the fact that, I mean, I've shot a few thousand rounds through this now and it still feels as tight as it was new. Just the way it opens and closes is big and solid and reliable, and you can feel the hand finishing over something like the 688, where you can just hear it happening, that it's still bedding in. The DT has been bed in for you, and bed in not like worn out, but actually assembled and regulated right. All right, none of these guns have balancing weights in, although the DT11 does have a custom stock on it. So bear in mind that this gun without the custom stock will balance differently. But that's why you can get balancing weights for it. So this gun with a custom stock that was balanced to where I wanted it is bang over the hinge pin. Out of the box, a 32-inch non-adjustable will be slightly in front of the hinge pin. That's why you get balancing weights in the box. You can bring it back if you want. Some people like it front heavy, some people like it back heavy. I think for years I was obsessed with every gun being the same, but actually now, maturing, I'm realizing that we're all different. And there is a way that I deem perfect, but that's because I like it that way. But then I've shot guns that aren't like that I really like too. This 694, out the box, no balancing weights, front heavy. That's why it comes with balancing weights. There we go. You are talking 20mm. Let's call it an inch in front of the hinge, in that kind of ballpark. The 688 comes with no balancing weights, and if we put this over the hinge, it is front heavy. It is about half an inch, quarter of an inch in front of the hinge, and is slightly more fussy in terms of its balance point than the 694, which is a bit more planted. Yeah, it is an interesting one. Interestingly, with the DT and the 694, wood can make a huge difference to balance. And so a slightly different grain piece of wood will balance differently to another grain piece of wood. There's many grams, many ounces different between woods. And so if you pick two guns up where the metalwork is the same, you could end up with a slightly different balance. The 688, there's going to be much less variance in the laminate. The balance, however, is kind of secondary to the handling. All of these guns will handle slightly differently.
Now, handling without shooting is subjective, so for any real handling feedback, shooting impressions are vital, because a gun can feel great in the hands, but what really matters is how it performs when you're in the stand or in the field. Let's start with a DT11. Because it's got a big block of steel for an action, this means it's got a wider grip, a bulkier forend, and just more wood and metal overall. All this thickness and weight around the middle gives it a very planted feel, swinging on clays like it's on rails. The extra weight paired with the Stellium Pro barrels makes it about as smooth a gun to handle and shoot as you'll find. Weight distribution is your friend here, and the DT11 sits right in that mid-weight sweet spot. You can then fine-tune it with barrel and stock weights, shifting the balance where you like, but because it's well centered to begin with, it never feels extreme in either direction, just controlled. The 694 is like its baby brother. The action is thicker and wider than 680 series guns, but it's definitely more nimble than the DT. That might suit your shooting style better, especially if you prefer a gun that moves with a bit more zip. It's generally an easy gun to shoot, and a lot of that comes down to its center forward weight distribution. Once you get it moving, it swings smooth and true, and it's surprisingly forgiving, especially with my level of user error. The action weight is also set quite low, which helps avoid a top-heavy feel that can make a gun slightly harder to control. Then there's the 688. It is a bit more balance sensitive, but the results I've had with it at the Playground speak for themselves. It's got a touch more action weight than a standard 686, which helps keep the move steady. The laminate stock and adjustable comb also bring the balance back a bit compared to the non-adjustable 694 we're using today. As always, dialing in with the right balancing weights and an adjustable comb and pad to get the gun ready for your fit and shooting style is key.
Bosh!
It does have a little more recoil than the 694 or the DT11, but it's noticeably smoother than a 686 Sporter, and honestly, it's not that far off of a 694 in overall feel. Now, shooting impressions don't lie. The 688 gives you agility and serious performance for the price. The 694 gives you a touch more control, better barrel tech, and a more refined build overall, and the DT11? It gives you a heap of control, and its list of achievements on the competition circuit remove any doubt that your gear is good enough. That was a lot of details, but always remember, choose the one that fits your style and your budget, then spend some time setting it up for you, and then let it do as much of the work for you as possible.
Guys, that was a fun comparison. You know how much I love getting geeky in the studio, as much as I love taking these things out and shooting them. Hard to sum up all that information succinctly, but the bottom line always is don't let waiting to get the best gear stop you from going and having fun ever. Get a gun, go and shoot, go and enjoy this sport that we all love so much. And secondly, better guns are better. Better technology is better. It's not going to make you point the gun in the right place, but certainly helps give you confidence. I love the planted feel of this, but I still can never get away from quite how good that 688 is. I just can't help but love that machine. I didn't miss a single target with it today. To be fair, I only missed one with mine, and the 694 did very well. I think I missed 3 targets with it, which is neither here nor there. Inherently, shooting 3 guns back to back with 3 different sight picks and 3 different stock types is always a little bit more of a challenge than I remember it being the last time I was out. Thank you very much for watching. I'd love to know your thoughts. Technically, they're all very different. The way they shoot is quite difficult to sort of sum up because there's a lot of similarities and they're all infinitely customizable. But I suppose that's the beauty of modern sporting guns, right? Is you buy one and you make it yours. Take care, guys. Got a lot of guns to clean. Thank you for watching TGS Outdoors. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. The channel would not be possible without the support of our amazing sponsors who keep videos coming to you week after week. If you really enjoy the channel and want to support it yourself, please consider becoming a member. Channel members get a bit of extra content. Today we're going to be talking about good shooting advice. But mostly, you just keep us going and we love the support. There's a great community goes on behind the scenes. Take care, guys. Goodbye, and we'll see you on the next one.